Hey, Sydney, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Let me let everyone in. So, as you can tell, I am not Dennis. So Dennis is away. So, I'm Brady. I believe I was emailing you just the other day.
Yeah, I've seen you on LinkedIn too. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's get everyone else in here. Looks like John's here. Hey, John. How's it
You
going, boss?
changed.
Yeah. Dennis
Did
got
you
a little.
graduate?
I just made you co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
All right. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
All right. Did you graduate?
Yeah, I do on Friday. So yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like
What's
I've been
next?
for a while. I don't know what's next. I'm in the pipeline for investment banking role with Bearings, but I'm supposed to hear more this week.
Working what city?
I don't know. So they offered Charlotte, New York, or split 50-50 between Charlotte and Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of waiting to hear back on that. I have a few offers. I got accepted into a few grad schools. I'm just kind of waiting to hear back from everyone though. I'm not really in a rush. Just day trading, doing my thing. So
That's good. So you started your fund again?
oh yeah. So I could trade equities again because I'm not locked up with any of my contracts. So been really enjoying it. Missed it. Hello everyone.
Yeah.
So I'll give it a few minutes for everyone to get in and then explain the fact that I'm obviously not Dennis.
The virtual Dennis.
Yeah, I haven't been active in the cohort just because we started Monday. My last day contracted is tomorrow, so we have another guy, Grant, that'll be taking over my position.
So are they going to do a physical graduation where you'll be in the stadium?
So yeah, we'll have commencement in the stadium, but we're not gonna have our individual school ones where you actually walk. But yeah, so it'll physically be in person, rain or shine, at the stadium on Friday. They have like 3 different blocks depending on what college you're in, and that's it. How's everyone doing today?
Right.
So it's 1 o'clock. John, do you want to get started now or give everybody a few more
We
minutes?
can give time. I'm going to be pretty quick. We won't use the full hour most likely unless there's a lot of questions.
Okay. Sounds good to me. And if you guys have been emailing me throughout this past week and I haven't gotten back to you, I apologize. I was taking my last finals. I believe I got back to everyone. But if I missed you, just shoot me another email. So for everyone that has joined in the past few minutes, my name's Brady. So I've been Dennis's assistant since we started Girl last summer. I haven't been around this week to meet you all because unfortunately tomorrow is my last day, but I will be the guy taking over after me, Grant. He's a great guy, so you guys will be in communication with Grant a lot. We still have a few people joining. Everybody enjoying the nice hot weather?
Yes, sir.
Let's change up from the
Yeah.
rain and cold.
Are most of the participants in Eastern North Carolina or from all over the state?
Based on this cohort, majority are east of 95. I do
Mhm.
think we have a couple across the state, but not too many. Do we have anybody? We don't have anybody out of state. I think we had some people apply out of state, but just due to the grant that funds us, we couldn't accept. Just a friendly reminder too, I just sent out a Slack announcement. Make sure you guys send in your company logos if possible. Shoot an email to Dennis with them or shoot an email to Grant Smith. I sent his email on Slack. It's smithg19@students.ecu.edu. I'll put it in the chat here too. We use everybody's company's logo. That way we could put it on our Accelerate Rural website. So we want to show you guys off. So make sure you guys send in those company logos if you can, please. We haven't had a new person join in the past couple of minutes. So I'm sure there will be some stragglers that come throughout the session, but I'll stay online to make sure I let them in and make sure there's no technical difficulties, John.
Okay. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, if you want.
All right, let me share my screen. Oops. And get rid of this. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right, well, good afternoon. My name is John Ciannamea, and today we're going to talk about creating your lean canvas. And it will take probably 30 to 40 minutes. If you have questions, be glad to take them throughout. We'll also have plenty of time at the end if there's questions. And first, you may ask, why the lean canvas? And essentially, it's an abbreviated business plan. I'm old enough that I can remember how old business plans were. In fact, I was cleaning some papers and I found my very first business plan when I moved to Palo Alto back in 1983. And it was almost 70 pages long. And that included all the appendices and extra information, which you used to have to put in those days. And to be honest, most people don't read them. They look at certain sections and it's really changed a lot. You can get away now with a pitch deck and a financial model. Some cases I've seen people even request that the plan be no more than a couple of pages if it is a Word document. In the end, though, really the business plan or the lean canvas is used to help wash out the risk before you get started. It makes you think about certain aspects of the business, which you know they're there, but you didn't really deal with yet. And the other thing is it's easy to use. There's not a right or wrong answer. It's a living document. You can skip around and do parts as you go, fill in what you're comfortable with and go back and do the rest later. A little bit of history. If you've been involved with ECU with their I-Core program or other programs, you've probably seen the business model canvas, and it's also taught in certain business classes. And the business model canvas has these 9 sectors. And it again, it is a way of doing a business plan. You kind of fill in the blanks. It makes you think through the aspects. Unfortunately, some of these things don't fit as well for an early stage or startup company. The lean canvas also has 9 sectors, the same shape, although a few of them are different. And if you were to compare them, you could see in the top left what the business model canvas would call key partners is the problem in the lean canvas. Another difference is over to the right side, the unfair advantage in lean canvas. In the business model canvas, they call customer relationships. So again, a little different. I think the solution and key activities is also a good difference. A lot of times when people are trying to design their product and all, you are trying to solve a problem. What is the solution? And to me, that's more meaningful than having some of the key activities in the startup stage. So those are the key differences. There is a recommended approach about how we go about those. And today we're going to cover half of the sectors. Tomorrow we'll cover the second half. And you'll find, though, it's the kind of thing you can bounce around. You don't have to do it sequentially. So again, there's not a right or wrong way, but the sequence that's recommended is do the problem, customer segments, unique value proposition, then the solution, then channels, revenue streams, cost structure, key metrics, and unfair advantage. A few suggestions I think which will make your life easier is this is not a task that requires a lot of time. I mean, if you have a whiteboard, you want to use Post-it notes, that can work. You can just scribble in keywords. So again, don't feel like it's a big time drain on your stuff. The other thing is think in the present about what you have today or what you can do today. And also always keep in mind the customer and a customer-centric approach. This is, again, a document you can update as evidence is gathered. In talking about filling it out, I'm going to use 3 examples, 3 different businesses that I've been involved with through my career. And they have 3 different types of products or services. The first is a scuba diving business. And this was, had a friend who was a very talented electrical engineer, also knew a lot about networking as well as semiconductors, and was an amateur scuba diver. And back in the 2000 timeframe, he went on an expensive vacation and wasted 2 tanks of air looking for a shipwreck where it was supposed to be. And he said, there's got to be a better way to find it. And he did some research and found that underwater GPS didn't exist. And so he went out and made some inventions, and it was in some patented technology in terms of addressing the underwater GPS market. So that was a product development and product sales type company. The middle business was a service business, and it had to do with serving as brokers for the sale of intellectual property, and most of the intellectual property being issued patents. And this was a business I was a co-founder of. It was in the 2010 to 2014 timeframe. But again, it's a different type of business, a service business. The hot dog represents a retail business, and there was, back in the 80s, I was asked by an acquaintance to help consider acquiring a hot dog business. And the idea was that it would be franchised, and they were unique hot dogs. They were very small hot dogs with buns, catered mostly to a college crowd or people who really appreciated the chili and the flavor. And I'd like to say it was sort of for you Harold and Kumar fans, it was the White Castle of hot dogs in those days. So let's start with the lean canvas. So the first sector, which is the top left side, is the problem. And what you want to do is identify your top 3 problems. You don't have to have 3, but let's keep it limited. And then also just note, how are these problems being addressed today, if they are being addressed? So using the three examples of the companies, if we look at the underwater GPS business, the number one problem is you can't navigate underwater. And I haven't kept up with the technology, but in those days, even the Navy SEALs just used a compass and a dive board, and somebody counted kicks, and you hoped you ended up where you're supposed to be. But you had to pop your head up and reacquaint yourself where you were, but you weren't able to navigate. The second big problem was that you can't locate objects, mostly locations for doing underwater resource extraction, like oil wells. Also, from time to time, communication cables, which still exist under the oceans and bays, they get snagged or they're sabotaged, and you have to locate it and repair. A third big issue, which I think has solved since those days, it wasn't easy to communicate underwater. A lot of times the scuba divers had to use hand signals, and if there was a communication method, you had to have line of sight. So if your diving buddy was behind a big boulder or behind a ship, you wouldn't be able to communicate them without line of sight. The alternatives were terrestrial GPS. That will get you to on the surface where you think you're supposed to be. So in the case of that shipwreck with my friend, he was close, but he still wasted 2 tanks of air trying to find it underneath. Compass at the time was the preferred method to get around, and hand signals, also using kind of underwater whiteboards. In the case of the intellectual property brokerage business, is surprisingly companies and patent owners just didn't know how to monetize their patents. There are a lot of big companies own patents. The intellectual property is not core to their business. They would prefer to sell it or license it if it's not core, but they don't have the infrastructure and they don't know how the connections or know how to go about doing it. The alternatives is they would hire a lawyer, but most lawyers are not in the business of monetizing. They're in the business of prosecuting or developing the patents and getting them issued. A lot of times they would do nothing and let those that they weren't core just wither on the vine and expire, or else they may just try to do a cold call to somebody. And if they get lucky, they get lucky. In the case of the hot dog business, the problems, there was a demand for unique foods. I mean, everybody has kind of their specialty food, comfort food, but there is a demand for unique foods and flavors. This was a location where it was on a busy city street, a city of about 50,000, had limited parking, had a walk-up window, not a drive-through spot, but there was a need for speed and convenience. Everybody wants to get their food, particularly at lunchtime or when they're in a rush. The alternatives nearby, there was a White Castle, there was a Jack in the Box, but those are probably the 2 closest fast food type places. If we look at the next segment, which is the far right, it's the customer segments. And here you want to identify your target customers and users, and in particular, the early adopters. So if we think of the underwater GPS business, certainly the US Navy would be a big customer. We had discussions with the Navy SEAL Special Forces as well as the Submarine Command. So there was a lot of interest in this concept. Underwater resource companies, there are big companies with very expensive ships that in those days would cost $500,000 a day to go out to a specific location and locate a oil well in a precise location. Lastly, the recreational divers, which was a very big market also, but there you would help the divers in terms of locating items to see as well as communicating. Around that time, there was a movie, and I forget the name of it. It was about a scuba diving couple that was left behind in the Caribbean or somewhere. And there are examples you'll read from time to time where a dive ship doesn't keep track how many people they have, and they don't know everybody's under the water, have no way of tracking people, and will take off and leave somebody behind. The early adopters would be those that had the critical need for navigation, location, and communication. And the big two really were the Navy and the underwater resource companies. We did identify and have discussions with one of the large underwater resource companies. Again, somebody who owns a number of these ships that go out and identify and locate wells or other assets underwater. In the case of the service business, the customer segments are the companies with large portfolios. So we were going after Fortune 500 type companies who had thousands and thousands of patents. It's easier to find something to sell if somebody owned north of 10,000 patents. It was also companies with non-core IP. As you know, in the technology world, a lot of things become obsolete or the business products shift and things are not relevant to the current business, so they might be willing to sell. And then through our own networks, we knew of companies that weren't able to find buyers, but were looking for ways of leveraging those assets to become more productive financially. The early adopters would be those companies or patent holders with large portfolios in key areas. When I say in key areas, one advantage we had is we knew a number of buyers or interested parties who would give us their wish list of things they were looking for. And then it was easier to match up with others who had certain patents or assets that might fit those expectations. Also, a key characteristic is somebody that had realistic price expectations. If they said they needed $10 million per patent, we wouldn't touch it because you're never going to get that unless you sue somebody. So again, they had to be realistic in what they were thinking. In the case of the hot dog business, the target customers are the epicures, those who really appreciate the good foods. College students, there were 2 colleges in the town and did have a lot of foot traffic from the college students. And since it was in a downtown area, local shoppers and business people. And this, for the most part, was before the great proliferation of a shopping mall. So people were still shopping in a lot of the cities in those days. The early adopters are just the regular consumer of fast food or those that like the more flavorful and different foods. No questions, I'll move on. So the unique value proposition, and this is your message about why you are different and worth paying attention to or spending money on. And really it's a high level concept. You don't have to make it complicated. You can really keep it simple. So in the case of the underwater GPS, provide underwater GPS and communication not dependent on line of sight and includes a mesh network. And the mesh network was a big solution. We had a cost-effective solution where you would have different nodes in an array, and it didn't have to be in any particular pattern. So in the case of the military, if an enemy found one of your nodes, it wouldn't kill the network because there might be 50 others that are spaced out over some area, which still would connect all the points. It's like having a large Wi-Fi network underwater. The high-level concept is underwater GPS for military, commercial, and recreational users, and really somewhat in that order of priority. In the case of the service business, the patent business, the value proposition would be we have buyers interested in acquiring intellectual property. We had experience in selling and licensing intellectual property. We were willing to work on a success fee basis, so purely commission and a relatively high commission. And we also, because of our experience, were able to do transactions very quickly and efficiently. The high-level concept, intellectual property brokers helping companies monetize their intellectual property. So helping companies leverage and get a return on those assets, which are basically sitting idle. In the case of the hot dog business, the value proposition, convenient, delicious hot dogs and other diner food. The business did have a long counter, like a traditional diner counter. It had a small number of tables, but they did offer breakfast, traditional breakfast of eggs and things for cereals. Had lunches with soups and sandwiches. Didn't really have a dinner menu, but it was more of a fast food diner type place. The high level concept, world famous, most delicious hot dogs, and they sort of latched on to the world famous moniker as a result of some of the students were from other countries, and when they went back to their home country, they would write letters about how much they missed the special food, and he would post the letters on the wall. So he sort of used to use that as his subline, world famous hot dogs. Solution. Now we identified the problems. We want to talk about what is a possible solution in each case. And again, using the 3 examples. The first problem, can't navigate. So we have an underwater GPS network. And in the case of the military, if there was ever a war, I mean, the military could play games with the satellite GPS where you could put it off by some distance, or you could turn it off. In the case of the underwater GPS network, once it was activated, it's not dependent upon the satellites at all. So again, it was independent, it could last. It can't locate objects. We had a solution for tagging underwater assets. And when I say tagging, in the case of a underwater cable or pipeline, that in case you had to have maintenance or repairs, you could put tags at certain point, which could be inactive until needed, and then you could activate them to identify and locate where your asset was. In the case of the communications, which was for the divers, there was an ability to communicate using text messaging via dive watch. And again, I know that communications have advanced some since then, but at the time that was the state of the art. In the intellectual property service business, not knowing how to monetize was a problem. Solution is we had the experience and processes to monetize. We had people who did this for IBM and Boeing and Lenovo and other big companies. So again, we had the team that had done lots and lots of transactions and just knew all the processes and had processes that were scalable. The problem of intellectual property not core to the business, we could demonstrate a return on investment for those non-core assets. Again, these were assets they're just paying maintenance fees on. They're not using them to protect any of their property or their products. So how we help them monetize that. The third problem, not knowing how to find buyers. Because of our team's connections and having worked in a number of industries, we had a tremendous Rolodex. So we had connections with buyers in place and could get transactions done quickly. The hot dog business, the demand for unique foods, the solution we considered was franchising. This we thought could be an easy business to franchise, but it is somewhat regional because it is a brand that was only recognized within that city or people who happen to be in that city. The problem of need for speed, if we were to franchise or move out, it would have to have a better drive up or fast food layout. Again, this was an adaptation of an existing 3-story old brick building with a storefront window where, again, you could open the window and get your food at the street level, but it was not a drive-through. Convenience, and again, having accessible locations, particularly for the drive-through where you may have easy access from traffic on busy streets. So we did, and I know it was kind of quick, but I think you can see it's not that complicated. We did cover the first 4 sections, which are the white ones. And I got the wrong date up there. I copied this from before, so I apologize. But tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to do the green sections. But what I would recommend is, if you have time, is to take a stab at filling in those first 4 sections for your business. Again, there's not a right or wrong answer. You could see I was using very brief statements and not even full sentences. So it can be just a word, a phrase, whatever, but give a stab and give it a try. And Brady, I will take questions if there are any from the audience.
Yeah, we haven't had any in the chat, but feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions if you guys have any. Or does anybody want to give it a shot and kind of pitch their business to John and kind of your idea of what would go on the business model canvas? I highly recommend taking advantage of John's time right now. I've known John for years and he's helped me a lot. So highly, highly recommend this.
Hi, this is Rachel and Dan. I did have a quick question.
Okay.
Will we have an opportunity, once we have this more filled out, to present it and get feedback on what we're doing and kind of our thoughts on our businesses?
It wasn't planned for tomorrow, but if you're willing to put it out there, I'm only here today and tomorrow, but if you
Okay.
if you want to bring it up tomorrow, I'd be glad to do it. We can do a screen share, and if you want to put your stuff in front of everybody, I'd be glad to do it.
And
Okay.
outside of today and tomorrow too, I'll talk to Dennis and let him know. But Dennis is more than happy to kind of cover work you guys do whenever. So there will definitely be times in the upcoming weeks. And you could also utilize our Slack channel. I know I just sent you two both a Slack invite last night.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what Dennis has covered already, but basically Slack is just a big group chat. So you could always take like the PDF when you finish it or something, and you could send it into the Slack channel and kind of just ask for feedback. And then not only do you get access to feedback from Dennis, but I'm in the Slack channel. We have a few other interns that do consulting with us that do, and then also just your peers as well. And we do have some mentors that are on Slack as well that might give their feedback.
Okay.
I am a mentor, but I don't use Slack, but if you want to reach me outside of the class, you can do that.
Okay. Can you put your email in the chat?
Sure.
Perfect.
And John, I have a question about the unique value proposition. It takes up a large portion of the chart, but it's listed as only a single statement.
Well, and I think they adopted the 9 sectors from the other one. So by default, it fell in the middle. I don't think they implied that it's got to fill all that space.
So it's not a unique value proposition per issue. It's just one overall simple soundbite.
I think keep it simple. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've done probably close to at least 50 business model canvases over the past like 5-6 years. And I can say the simpler that I made them, the better it was. Because at first I tried to fill out all the space I could. But in reality, the way I like to think about it is it's just a brief, simple snapshot of your business. It puts it, into a nice little overview, and then you'll start to see things that you didn't really consider, like, distribution partners or something. You could be like, oh, wow, like I really need to find some more distribution partners because I thought everything was fine, but obviously that's not the case. So the simpler you can make it, in my opinion, it's harder to make it simpler. But the simpler you can make it, I feel like the better it is, because basically you should be able to give the business model canvas to somebody and they should be able to at least get a brief overview of your entire company without you having to say any words for the most part.
I'll tell you a story about simplicity. Years ago, when Jack Welch took over General Electric, they started a strategic planning process. This is back in the 80s. And each business unit had to come up with a strategic plan, and there was a whole process. But a big part of it, the starting part, was this mission statement. And he required that every head of that business unit had to have a mission statement they could get up and say without reading it. And therefore, you had these very simple, concise statements. And if you think about mission statements today, most organizations can't tell you what it is without reading it because they put in too much stuff that's not needed. So simple is good.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yes. Would this work with like an online radio station?
Yes. And I would see the radio station. I mean, it is somewhat like, I would say, the middle business I had. Because I assume you're selling advertising spots and you're developing programming to get certain age groups or whatever for your
Yes.
clients, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I have I guess a unique, I don't know if you know about Stax Records from the 70s. They had basically a record label and a radio station side by side. And that's how they exposed the unknown artists to the general public through the radio station. So I'm trying to redo that in a new age with new technology.
Yeah, no, there are a lot of stories about how they influenced the DJs to play things.
So yeah, some of your businesses, because I mean, just based off what I know from everybody in the cohort, we do have some very unique businesses and people, you know, all across the line. So some of you guys may struggle a little bit more. Yeah, no problem, Quindo. Thank you for coming out. So yeah, some of you guys may have problems or more difficulty trying to figure out your business model canvas. Again, utilize our Slack group. It's just really helpful, basically just offline communication. I'm personally a night owl, so even if you're up at 1 a.m., you know, Slack automatically mutes people's notifications late night. So don't worry about bothering people, you know, by sending a message at 1 a.m. or whatever, because who knows, I might be awake and I might be responding while you're working as well. So that's kind of the beauty behind Slack and why we try to push it so much. We have found with past cohorts, we had our very first cohort, didn't utilize it as much. Our second cohort did, and the second cohort, not only did everybody become closer across the peer group and even make, you know, several different new business relationships, but we just found everybody enjoyed the quality a lot more by utilizing Slack more. So I highly, highly recommend it. It is kind of a community thing, but all it takes is one person to kind of start the conversation, and then who knows who's going to jump in. Anybody else have any questions? Well, if nobody else has any questions, thank you all for coming out. I don't want to steal too much of John's time today or your time. So we will be covering the second part tomorrow, same time. It is the same link, but again, you will get the email tomorrow morning with the link just to verify. But it is the same link. John will be here for part 2. And outside of that, feel free to shoot me an email or Slack message if you guys have any issues. So thank you all for coming out today.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John, for your time.
Yep.